Ladies and gentlemen, today's guest is Ben Pierce. Ben Pierce is an aviologist, which is something I just learned. It's a waterfowl specialist. He also has a degree in horticulture. And today we're going to talk with Ben about ducks and maybe some hybrids and who knows what else. So welcome to the Fowl Minds podcast, Ben.
Thanks. My pleasure to be here.
Cool. Well, I'm excited to have you on. I know we met on the internet some time back. Some pretty interesting circumstances, I would say. It was like I can't remember what it is. People were posting a picture of maybe an Andes teal or a silver teal, and I'd been to Argentina a couple of times, and I mentioned something about the amount of subspecies of a silver teal, and then Ben corrected me. And I was like, well, I kind of said in the statement with the caveat that I wasn't for sure. And then Ben said it like a statement of fact, this is it. And I'm like, I don't really know. And he's like, no, I'm telling you. And then, then I clicked on, I was like, who's this guy? And I clicked on his page and I realized that I had added him probably about a year back. And, so a friend of Hayden and I's that actually suggested I add you for something I was talking about with hybrid related questions, right? And I guess with that, it's like apparently you have quite a bit of notoriety on the internet for identifying hybrids, and your inbox of friend requests is just flooded 24/7, right?
Yes, it is.
Right.
And personal what do they call them? PMs, personal messages.
Right.
Yeah, I get questions, especially during the hunting season. I'll get maybe 20 questions a day. So,
hey,
well, so far, the way we've done these, what I like to start out is just ask about your first duck hunt. You are a hunter as well, right?
Yeah, I've duck hunted. Yes.
You care to share your story of your first duck hunt?
That was 30 something years ago. So, I just remember I used to run around with my single shot 20 gauge, and jump shooting ducks down on the creeks on my dad's property. And that's pretty much how I learned how to duck hunt.
Cool. Is duck hunting what ignited your passion for all things waterfowl, or did it come before hunting?
It became before hunting. I was actually raising ring-necked pheasants and golden pheasants when I was younger, about 8, 9 years old, for 4-H. And I ran into a guy who actually had some wood ducks and mandarins at his house. And that is what sparked my interest in being around waterfowl. I got a book. This book is a really awesome book by Frank S. Todd. It's called Waterfowl, Identification of Waterfowl of the World. You can buy it on Amazon. It has every subspecies and species from around the world. It is kind of an older book. There has been updates to scientific names and stuff like that since that book came out. But I had it pretty much memorized by the time I was about 16 or 17. And I started raising waterfowl when I built my aviary. The guy told me to build an aviary, and so I built my aviary. And then he hooked me up with some wood ducks and mandarins, and it kind of just took off from there. I started having fascinations in what if you cross this duck with this duck, what it would look like. And when I was about 12, 13 years old, and I started breeding ducks and selling ducks to other zoos and other aviaries around the country, and I've been doing it ever since. And I've had over, I think, 47 different hybrid combinations since then that I've worked with.
Wow.
That's where my passion for ducks started.
Yeah,
Dang.
that's incredible. I'm just curious. Go ahead, Hayden. It's your turn.
What I was wondering about this. Me personally, I've never, that I know of, shot a hybrid, but maybe I have and didn't notice or pay that much attention. Maybe it could have slightly been a hybrid. But what do you see is the most hybridized duck that in the flyways in the U.S. that are shot every year?
So, well, in the eastern seaboard, the Atlantic flyway, the black duck mallard hybrid's probably the most commonly seen that gets harvested and seen by like birders or biologists, and they do a lot of studies on that hybrid back east because like over there the mallard population is affecting the black duck population quite a bit, so they do a lot of studies on that hybrid combination over there. A lot of biologists probably say that that's the most common hybrid combination. But there are others. But your mallard, all the ones in the mallard family are pretty much the most common hybrids. Like you get down closer to the Florida, you'll have the Florida mottled duck that crosses with the mallard, and then you over by Texas, you'll have the Texas mottled, and then you get further west, and you'll end up having the Mexican duck crossed with the mallard. So, and then the other ones that we see the most of are the Mallard's Pintail hybrid. That one is fairly common worldwide because northern pintails and mallards live all in the northern hemisphere. So you can see that in Russia or France. And then the American widgeon mallard is a little not as common as that one is. And then there's also the brewer's, well, people call it the brewer's duck, but just because the guy that was studying it about 150 years ago thought it was its own species. And that's probably one of the most common worldwide also is the mallard crossed with the gadwall. You get a lot of different variations just in the F1 generation, which they are sterile. So you only see those F1 generations if you see a mallard gadwall hybrid.
So for those of you listening that don't know what an F1 is, and I happen to know this cattle, but it's just a first generation cross of two species. Is that correct, Ben?
Yes, that is very correct.
Hayden, I think that led into the next question you had.
Yeah, I was gonna ask why, certain species of waterfowl hybridize more than others.
Yeah, so waterfowl is actually the most common hybrid combinations in the world. They hybridize all the time. Why they are so aggressive towards hybridization is just that word right there, aggressive.
Yeah.
You'll get certain individuals, especially mallards and pintails and stuff. You'll find one individual, they have their own little personalities like humans. And I've noticed in observing them, like in my aviary and in the wild, you'll get a pintail drake that he's paired up with a hen, and he'll breed that hen and go and then she'll go set her eggs so that she can hatch them. And when she goes to do that, the male's like, well, I'm still looking for love. And he goes and finds another hen, and sometimes it's not his species. He'll find a mallard that's close by or a green-winged teal and sit and harass them. And they actually, the most common way hybridization happens is through their aggressiveness. And so they
struggle snuggle.
The female, you have to chase them down and breed them. Another way is they do like a group
struggle snuggle,
where there'll be 5 or 6 ducks that will attack the hen. One of them holds him down, and the other duck will do the job. And so that's the other way. And then the last and most least in the wild that happens is where they'll actually pair up with an opposite species. And but I have seen that you get ducks in a enclosed facility, and they you have more chances of them hybridizing, but it still takes a lot of luck in order for it to happen. So
Cool.
It's pretty interesting. Yeah.
I would have, you know,
Mhm.
I'm glad Hayden asked the question the way that he did, because to go back to like the more common species, it's like I was just assuming brewers, but I didn't even think. So I live on the coast of Texas. I live south of Houston, and we see mottled ducks all the time, right? And it makes perfect sense, right? I could see the Florida models and the Texas models. That's probably, like you said, pretty common thing. And they both, you know, have a lot of the same characteristics, right? I could see them most, you know, having the most success, or maybe being the most naturally, I don't know if you would call it attracted to each other, but that makes a lot of sense.
Yes, and they look very similar, and they are fertile. So you can the gene pool goes wild, and you can, depending on which direction they go with their like if they pair, like if that F1 pairs back up with the mallard, then they'll start taking on more of the mallard traits, and vice versa with the mottled duck, and they get very confusing after a while. You'll be like, wait a second, is this a mottled duck, or is there a little tiny bit of mallard in this thing, or you know, and then you're like scratching your head trying to figure out what it is.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've had I didn't shoot a black duck. I have shot, and I know Hayden has too, shot a mottled duck, Texas mottled, never a Florida mottled. And I've shot a Mexican mallard. Now I want to share my screen real quick, because I have a picture of, it could be an eclipse mallard. I wanted to get your opinion on this bird. Let's see.
Okay.
It's this is a bird from about as far west Texas as you can be. Let's see. There we go. Share. All right. So I got one more picture of this bird, but it's got a little bit of green on its head. Let me see.
Man, it almost looks like it's crossed with a widgeon, huh?
It's you shot that over on the western part of Texas.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that would be a mallard crossed with a Mexican duck. Like I'm actually down in my taxidermy room right now with all my birds. I call it the dead aviary. And I don't know how I can show you guys, but I have a Mexican duck, 100% that was raised in my aviary. And it was genetically tested to be 100% Mexican duck. Let's see here. I don't know how to show you guys.
Just you can turn your whole phone. You're on your phone right now, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, just turn the whole thing around.
You guys see my duck?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Okay.
Mexican mallard, right?
Yes, this is a Mexican mallard. If you come down here by the tail, right above the tail where the curls would be for a mallard, there's nothing.
Your camera down a hair. Bring it down.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay. Yep.
You see that?
Yeah.
There's no color. If you have a Drake hybrid mallard crossed with the Mexican mallard, Mexican duck, right here would be black, and you'd see somewhat of some curls on his butt. This one here is a male Mexican mallard, and it's 100% Mexican mallard. And so like you'll see the genetics from the mallard, they'll be expressed somewhere somehow. The only thing that can happen is the next generation, if he bred with a mallard hen, you could end up starting to see more and more of the mallard genetics come out.
So it's the tail is the big indicator.
Yeah, it's entire, well, and then it's speculum too. You can see that.
Do you see, this is a question I just thought of, and do you see more hybridization in geese than you do ducks?
It's about even. I see a lot more of the goose hybridization I see a lot more of is like, for example, your domestic geese crossed with Canadas. The more and more people you have that buy, well, that buy the like the domestic swan goose, the gray lag, the pilgrim goose, all those ones you can buy at the feed store, local feed store, and people, they don't realize how messy they are until they buy them, and they, you know, they want to have them in the tub, or they just tear apart their yard, and or they have they didn't realize they had a neighborhood ordinance where they couldn't have them. So they'll go and let them go at the local park, and then you get your local Canadas and migrating Canadas that come through, and they'll breed with that, and they're sterile though, so you only see that F1 generation of that goose combination. There's a lot of the hybrid wild species that you'll see are the snow goose Canada. It's usually with the lesser Canada goose and with the snow goose, or with a Ross. And then you get your speckle belly or your white fronted goose that crosses with Canadas as well. And they're usually there'll always be the smaller, the lesser Canada, not the cacklers though. The lesser Canadas cross the most with those two different species because they breed up there with them up in the tundra. So a lot of the goose hybrids around here that we have are with a domestic goose, and they're very aggressive as well.
I've seen that from domesticated geese as well. Now that you mentioned that aggressive behavior that you were talking about.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We were
Yeah,
talking.
there's a lot of them at parks, along waterfronts, rivers. They can fly, and so they'll get mixed in with migrating Canadas that are coming through that aren't, you know, your local park Canadas that just stay there and eat bread, which is not good.
Right.
But anyway, there's quite a few of those, and people will shoot them like clear out in the middle of Iowa and be like, I got a hybrid. And I was like, well, you did get a hybrid, but that goose is a domestic goose hybrid bred with a Canada goose. And like, oh, okay. And I mean, it's still a cool looking bird, but a lot of people.
That reminds me of which that other picture that I popped up, I had already sent you. That our cameraman, he takes he does some photography stuff as well, and he has a spot that he sets up and gets pictures of ducks, and that was one that I had sent you one of, was the that it was a bib duck, right? That, remember?
Yes, that is. So that's a 100% mallard, and what has happened is a domestic duck, from a lot of what I was talking about earlier with the domestic geese, is people go buy ducks, you know, at the feed store. They come home, they decide that they can't take care of it anymore, and for example, the duck that you're showing, that duck, its express genetics comes from either a black Swedish, that's just a breed name of a mallard that humans have created out of the mallard species. And so when they release those ducks into the wild, those genetics, each generation, are dominant and will be expressed. They might not exactly look all the same each generation, but you can tell that there was that domestic genes that were entered into their population. And a lot of it has that piebaldism that happens on their chest. If you look up black Swedish ducks or blue Swedish ducks, they were bred for meat. They are a little bit bigger than normal mallards, and then when they start breeding with your normal or wild mallards, then you start getting all these different weird color variations of them. So it's, yeah, it is. It's, what's that?
Ben, you know, I just thought of something. You talking about mallards, you know, it seems like a lot of waterfowlers in the Mississippi flyway target mallards, right? Arkansas, Mississippi, Louisiana, Missouri. Have you seen, you know, you're a numbers guy. Have you seen numbers of, can you, let me think about this. Can you say if there's the number of mallards compared to other ducks is good?
The,
You
the
know,
long-term average.
the long-term average, you know, that's what Clayton and I, you know, we're not, I mean, I just like duck hunting, right? But if I have my choice, I'm gonna go hunt mallards, right? And it seems like everybody's that way. And I just wonder, you know, since it seems like, you know, when our mallards come in, you definitely know, like they show up, right? And
Uh-huh.
and they're together. So I always wondered, you know, man, if we're over here mopping them up, how many other thousands of people are doing it? What is it actually, you know, doing to the number of mallards? You know, I know that Ducks Unlimited puts out the survey numbers every year, and I'm sure they're, you know, they have good ways of measuring that, but I also wonder, you know, actually how accurate those numbers can be. And you see that a lot on Facebook and stuff, people talking about that, especially when they're slow years, you know. So
Mm-hmm.
something I always wondered. Never had the opportunity to talk to an actual biologist about it.
Yeah, so I have kind of mixed opinions and ideas on the way, like, for example, it's really hard. The way that we count ducks is a lot of them, people do aerial surveys. They'll go out and they'll take pictures, like especially during migration. I'm sure there's a couple um, biology places there in the Central Flyway. I think Illinois, there's one where they'll go and do aerial surveys, and then what they do is they use just like a little tiny little square. You know, they count how many ducks they see in one little section on the picture, and then they multiply it by how big your picture is, or the ground that they're covering, and then they
Right.
estimate how many ducks are within that whole entire area just by how many they count. They multiply it by the larger square, and so they are just all estimations. I mean, there could be 3 million mallards 2 miles over from where they are, but they just did their survey within that, like 2 or 3 lakes right where they flew over, and but then they multiply that number and kind of try to estimate how many they think that there are. Um, it's a lot easier. Like in my aviary, to count my birds, I count them one by one. But biologists, you have to. It's just like when they survey elk or anything, they just do an estimation
Yeah.
Of how many they assume that would be there with by counting them in their pictures they take and stuff. And but me personally, I think mallards. I think there's a ton of them. I don't think, I think there's a lot more than people are saying there are. I just think what fluctuates what we see is the migration. You know, the lighting of when they migrate and the weather. We all love that cold front that pushes the birds down.
Right.
And then also ducks, to me, I have learned they are opportunists, and they are omnivores, so they eat like anything and everything. They even eat themselves. If there's a dead duck, they'll sit there and they'll eat all the fat preserves off the butt of the duck.
Really?
And so if they have, say, up in Canada, you have 3 million acres or something that somebody planted milo and corn, and then they have a fresh water source that stays open when it freezes. It's kind of like us when we on Sunday afternoon, if we have a bag of potato chips and some beer by the couch, we're not going to go anywhere. So that's the analogy I like to use is
Oh, no
ducks.
doubt.
Yeah, if a duck is happy, he's not getting stressed from predators. He has food and he has open water to live on and roost on. Then they'll just stay there. And that we're actually seeing a lot of that with mallards and Canada geese. When you get into like city limits and stuff, they don't migrate anymore. They just stay there.
Yep.
And that will happen. That happens a lot. Like I live right next to the Snake River, and when it starts to freeze, those ducks, especially the ones that live at higher elevations in Idaho, you'll start to see them migrate down, and they just live on the river for the winter. But then there's also the ones that come down. I think it has to be an extremely hard, cold push of weather in order for them to really move. Which I think we saw that this last hunting season. There was quite a few birds that I noticed people are shooting down in New Mexico, Arizona. That people would send me pictures and ask me what they were because they hadn't seen them their whole entire duck hunting life. Like somebody shot some lesser scaup down in Arizona, and they weren't too sure. Golden eyes, some buffleheads. Somebody even shot a couple long-tailed ducks in the middle of Arizona, and so I think we had a good push of birds because the water actually got completely frozen over up here.
You don't even. So I'm just realizing just now.
I hope that answered your question.
No, it does.
I'm just realizing just now that you get more than just hybrid. People are actually asking you what a lesser scaup is. Like that's a thing that. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, that's exactly. Like I have a lot of people that they won't know what a duck is, or they'll think that it's a hybrid, and they'll send me a picture, and it's just like a juvenile, lesser scaup or a juvenile hooded merganser, and because a lot of those species, a lot of people don't, they're not around them every day or see them when they're from little babies all the way until they're adults, and see the plumage coloration and stuff that they never see. They just see the picture of it, and not everyone has like what it looked like on week 5 when it was growing up, or week 8, or it held on to its plumage because it was sick, so it stopped molting because it couldn't produce those feathers. Because it was too stressed out to make feathers. And I mean, it takes a lot of time and effort in order to keep their feathers nice and able to handle the weather.
Yeah, you need a secretary, man. You need a secretary to take all like the common.
What's that?
You need a secretary to take like all the common ID requests, right?
What'd you say?
I said you need a secretary to take your common, like the.
Yeah, I keep being told I need to just start what is that called? Those where people sell their foot pictures.
Only
friends only.
Yeah,
yeah. I need to start a friends only and just have all my information on there and like do a daily video of like a certain hybrid or a species of duck that people want to learn about. And I was like, yeah, that'd be cool if I need to get a little bit more technically
that's
advanced.
I was about to say you had some, but what you should seriously consider, obviously the OnlyFans is out of the questions. Wrong kind of quacker, I guess. But if you you should like a Patreon and then charge somebody $1. Like I would be, I mean, it's better than nothing, right? Or $2 or $5, I would pay $5 just to get people to, it's like, okay, so the probably the video I sent you of that first hybrid that I think we talked about, which was the Brewers you had mentioned. I don't have the video on my computer, but it's like they were like, it's a Mallard, it's like 16-year-olds. They just started hunting and they're excited. Like, it's a Mallard Pintail hybrid. I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a Brewer's duck. And they're like, no, it's a Mallard Pintail. So it's like $5 right then just to get the guy to shut up would have been no problem for me. I would have hawked that up right away.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. Maybe I need to get you guys to help me do that.
Yeah, I wouldn't mind. I wouldn't mind helping you. It's a good view.
Ben, I see these we were talking about this, and I wanted to bring this up, but I didn't want to interrupt you. You know, you were saying how ducks are opportunists, right? And how they won't move, or you know, things got to lock up for them to migrate and all that. And this year for us, was probably migration wise for me. I really saw it. You know, the last couple years have been okay, right? I mean, we still killed a good amount of ducks, but for in Texas and even we hunt a lot. Clayton and I hunt a lot in Mississippi too, in the Delta. It was good. Like the ducks came down, you know, during the season. We held ducks, and then we'd get these big fronts, and then you know, a front would blow in on Sunday night, a hard northern. You'd go hunting Monday morning, and then you'd hear them in the sky, you know, and you'd see them moving. And then I always I get really invested, and I shouldn't. I'm doing better now, but I get invested in these Facebook groups, and they'll be complaining, man. Oh, there's no ducks, or you know, Ducks Unlimited's lying, or Tony Vandemore and his heated corn ponds, you know, he's holding all the ducks, you know, ban planting corn. And I was thinking, I listened to a podcast one day, and I forgot, you know, I forgot which one it was, but the guy was saying, you know, well, let me tell you this, like we planted some corn this year, but we also have a lot of rice. For us, the ducks preferred the rice, right?
Yeah.
They were in the corn, but they were mainly using the corn for cover, you know, to get out of the wind. There'd be a bunch of ducks sitting in the corn, but they really weren't feeding. They were just in there.
Uh-huh.
But they were feeding hard in the rice, you know. And it's amazing. What we did was we flooded everything in stages. You know, we had some water early to get our photo migrators, and then we had enough water, you know, on the opener around Thanksgiving to, you know, mid-December to hunt. And then around like January 1st, we opened up you know, we turned the wells on. And so we had fresh food, you know, the whole season. And that really worked. It worked good for us, but you know, we had one particular spot that just, man, the ducks, they were in there. I mean, there was 1,000 ducks in this hole every day. You know, we'd hunt it once a week, shoot them, and then they'd be back, you know. But at the towards the end of the season, it would get less and less and less. And after I thought about it for a while, what happened was they were eating all the food out. You know, it was a bean field with some corn and millet and stuff like that in there, but they had eaten it all out. And my point is, this podcast I was listening to, the guy was saying, he's like, man, you know, he owned a lot of public land. He was saying, man, you know, if you can plant corn, great, you know, but I hunt public land. He said, you know, I don't know why everybody's complaining about the corn. He said, if you get 10,000 mallards and 200 acres of corn, they're going to eat it out in a week anyway, you know?
Yes.
It doesn't matter, you know? And I think it's just all about imprinting and being in pressure, you know, pressure more than it. Food's important, but you know, pressure is a big deal too, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Pressure is a big thing when it comes to hunting. One thing I learned from when I was a kid that I was starting to get really, that I observed, I can't say that word, was we have probably about 4,000 acres where I grew up. I grew up on a big cattle ranch, and so we have a lot of swamps and stuff. And I started to realize when I was a kid that so ducks, if their habits, so a female will go back within the same area where she nested the year before because she knew she was safe there and where she could raise her babies. And whatever male paired up with her on the wintering grounds will go back up with her. Well, that hen, when she hatches her babies and then raises them up, when she migrates in the fall, they go to wherever their ancestors, you know, their mom or their grandma show them where to go. So say a mallard hatches up in Alberta and then, has certain spots through Montana that it likes to hit and feed. And if they know that there's a lot of food there, that's where they'll instinctively go to that spot and keep going all the way down to their final destination. And we've learned that with the transmitters nowadays. But back then, I noticed so we had like a flock of pintails when I was a kid, that there was for like 3 or 4 years when I first started duck hunting, we'd have like 20 or 30 pintails in the slough every fall. Well, as me and my cousins started shooting them, we noticed every year there was less and less of those pintails, and there was more of a different species there because we were killing the females along with the males, and they're the ones that keep that migration path going with each generation. And so when I feel like if we go into an area and just like shoot it up, and if you're hitting the killing hens as well as the males, I have nothing against shooting hens, but I mean there's a lot of them also, but you kind of ruin that route. You'll put a kink in it, and then all of a sudden there's no more pintails that are coming into that swamp that you like to hunt, because you killed kill that lineage line that they migrate through there with. And I've just observed that growing up and watching ducks and stuff like that and what they do.
So there's 2 points that you made there that I wanted to talk to you about. So one of them was, I forget what the term is called that you were mentioning, where they go to the same. It's something along the line of like homing, right? But it's a different terminology. What is?
Yeah, it's kind of like what you just said, like the homing pigeon. Like they'll go back home. But I can't think of what it's called off the top of my head right now.
And so my understanding that canvasbacks had that were the strongest. Like they would almost go to the same side of the pond that they nested in. Like that was, is that accurate, or is there other species that you would consider more like they have that path drilled down, or is it just depend on the personality of the duck?
I think it does. I think it personally depends on that individual duck and their personality, their characteristic. I think of birds, I think of all ducks like humans. We're all different. We all want to go different places. But then, for example, I'm sure you've seen this down where you are. There's that Eurasian collar dove that just all of a sudden, like 12 years ago, exploded all over North America. But yeah, they have, and then the black-bellied tree duck down where you guys are. I mean, I've heard that thing's like taking off all over the place.
Oh man, I actually, as soon as the sun, I might be able to walk outside or open the door, and you hear the black-bellied whistling ducks flying over. It's crazy. They're
cool. I have them in my aviary. They're a lot of fun. But if you ever raise some in your aviary, you'll have to make sure they have their own pen. They'll kill baby ducks. They're very territorial, and they'll kill all the other baby ducks in the cage. So
savage.
That's why there's so many of them. It's because they, within the area of where they are, if they nest there, they'll kill mallard babies or teal babies, so that their babies can have all the food that they need in that pond.
So, all right, the other point I wanted to get at is, and I thought about this earlier as well, but you brought up a pintail earlier in the call. You brought up a pintail looking for love after he breeds a female, and then he may go breed something else. Now to tie that into what you mentioned just a second ago, which was, shooting drakes, which I try to do, and when Hayden's with me, he tries to do it too, right? Or we try to do it together, let's say. And then, but that being said, I can't say that I always try, because sometimes you bring new people along, and it's you just want them to have fun, and they just need to shoot. And I understand that, but yeah, for me, I'm at the level now where I've hunted for so long that it's fun for me it's just another skill, to like, okay, I want to sex that bird. I want to sex and ID that bird before it puts its feet down, and know which one. And it's that's what keeps the excitement for me, is just challenging myself to get better. So if you ever, watch our show on carbon, I think it's like episode 3 maybe, but we did a pretty good job on trying to, when we're just together, we usually do a pretty good job at shooting drakes. Now,
Yeah, we do. Like you said, we got other people with us. It's hard, man, you know, to keep to, because they can't do it, or maybe they can, they mess up, but you know.
but so what I was going to ask was on so pintail are monogamous generally. Is that accurate?
They, yeah, like they look different, right? That's what you're asking.
So like, is my understanding that pintail, they have they have one female generally, but with mallards and other species, one male will breed several females. With pintail aren't as inclined.
Oh yes, yeah. Pintail are the same way. Actually, a lot of the hybrid pintail mallard combinations that we have done studies on, a lot of them, the male side of things comes from a pintail,
Really?
more so than a mallard, and so they're a lot more. Some individual pintails are a lot more aggressive, even more so than a mallard.
Wow.
And so I know everyone always says that ducks, geese, and swans pair up for life, and then if you kill their spouse, that they won't ever pair up again. But you can also use this word with breeding season as well. With ducks and geese and swans breeding, is they're opportunists. And so yeah, if the female's nesting, he'll go. Most of the time, they will go and find another female. They don't care what it is. They're still looking for love.
Yeah, that makes sense. I used to be that type of guy back in my younger years.
Yeah, that like a redhead, they're actually a parasitic duck. They will they'll lay their eggs in camusback nests, lesser scaup nests, and because of that, redheads are actually one of the most common to hybridize in the diver. Amongst all the diver species, are the ones that are closely related to them, anyways. And
yeah,
but yeah, they'll.
Oh, go ahead.
I was just say, yeah, that's what they do is they just that's probably one of your most common hybrids is with a redhead duck in the diving world.
Yeah, that's interesting you bring up redheads because Hayden and I, that's where we met, and we filmed our first duck hunt together. It was in 2011 when we were in college. We went to Texas A&M in Kingsville, and we were actually both I can't remember. I changed my major. I wanted to be a game warden, and then I figured out, well, if I'm going to be a game warden, then the peak season, I'm not going to be hunting, I'm going to be working. So then I said I wanted to be a biologist, and then I kind of started to figure out more about it was just really most of all the lifestyle that I wanted to live. I think it interfered with that. So I finished out with business. Hayden over here,
It's the exact same story. I wanted to be a game warden too, and that I can't do both. And then I want to be a biologist. Well, I'm not good at chemistry. I do ag science. Bringing that to farm, and I don't farm.
Hayden and I had a couple professors that didn't like us, but our horticulture
they probably still don't like us.
Our horticulture professor did like us though, Dr. Schuster.
Yeah,
she liked cool. But yeah, okay, cool. So while we're on the topic of pintail, so let me just actually kind of summarize what you just said. So pintail sometime are more likely to have several mates, just as mallards are. Okay.
Yep.
Interesting. So for people listening, if they had the ability and it wasn't just like ruining their hunt, if they have the ability and they enjoy trying to ID birds, you would agree that trying to target males is helpful to the populations.
Yes, I would agree with that. Just because females kind of have a that homing device, and they'll go back to take their babies back each place where they migrate, where a good place to eat or where they're safe. And then the males, they're there for, along the ride. They're like, hey, I'm gonna follow you home, and then they go and find another female after that. Or there are occasionally some that do actually pair up with a female and they stay with them. But those are certain individuals. You could write a play screen when it comes to ducks. You could sit in my aviary, for example, and just give each one of them a character and write like a play like Julius Caesar or something.
Their personalities are that much different, huh?
Oh yeah, yeah. Like some of my favorite are the Smew duck. It's a native over in Russia. It's kind of like a merganser. And them and all the eider ducks, they have very awesome personalities. And each one is personality is a little different. And then they form their little pecking orders in the aviary. So my hen common eider, when she starts to hear you coming to the cage, she starts going, and because she's gonna get her little treats, I give her a little shrimp. She knows that she's gonna get some shrimp if she hears anyone coming down to the cage. It's a lot of fun. They're like just little puppy dogs.
Awesome. Speaking of puppy dogs and eider, that's my dog's name. She's underneath me right now.
Awesome.
She's the spectacled eider though.
Oh, cool.
She's like a masked Chessie, and whenever she was a puppy, there were like rings around her eyes, right? So I was like, my Chessie before her that I had to put down about a year and a half ago, or about a year ago, she was the salty Pintail. So I thought about naming her eider. So when I got this one, I was like, that's perfect. Spectacled eider. She's got spectacles on. So
that's awesome.
So yeah, on the topic of Pintail, can you speak a little bit on the long-term average like decline? And I mean, it seems like from what I've been reading, like by next year we could have a closed season. Do you have any information on that you could share with us?
That's not really my field or what I study about. But my personal opinion, it seems like there's lots of pintails everywhere to me whenever I go out and do photography or anything, like, especially in the spring migration. There's so many pintails out here in Idaho where I live. I've never quite understood where they're coming from or what they're doing. It must be a lot up in the where they do the counting up in the central flyway, where they count a lot of the pintails. But I think there's plenty of them around the world. Personally, they do live in Russia and Europe and all in the northern hemisphere. There's a lot of pintails. But I mean, I could ask a couple of my biology buddies to get an accurate number on that, why they think that it's falling and why they're thinking of closing the season. But right off the top of my head right now, I wouldn't be able to tell you that kind of information.
I see it's been interesting to me recently because that's going to school there. I guess I didn't end up tying the last statement I made about us going to college in Kingsville. That's, as you know, on the Laguna Madre there, that's where all the redheads go, or like 85% or whatever it is. So it was my understanding from Delta Waterfowl that same area has the plurality of the pintail, the wintering pintail population.
Nice.
I don't know if that's accurate or not, but we definitely see a lot of pintail. And it always makes me very curious because there's a lot that are hard, and I say a lot, that area is pretty, from Corpus Christi, Rockport area, north of Corpus Christi, it's got a pretty good amount of pressure, but Corpus Christi in terms of pressure, and then anything further south, it's not, they don't see a lot of pressure. So it's not like a whole heck of a lot of pintail are being taken down there. Now, on the other hand, I see pictures of people going right across the border to Mexico. And I know Hayden has a buddy that used to guide just right in Mexico, and the limits are a lot more liberal, right? They have less hunters, and I understand that, but I can't get over, it's hard, it's difficult for me to see a picture of 100 dead pintail and not be like, that has something to do with, I mean, obviously harvesting does, but you know, I don't know. It just seems difficult for me to look at that and say, oh, that doesn't have a lot to do with it. I don't know.
I could say, and I was gonna say that too, Clayton. Like when we were hunting down there, we're in, in college, thousands of redheads, thousands of them. To the point where it's almost annoying. There's so many of them, and the pintail are the same way. But when I look at those guys down there, that's right, man. They're just whacking pintails. The whole boat, front of the boat is just
in Mexico, right?
yeah, in Mexico. I mean, the whole boat is piled 2 foot high with hen and drake pintails. So
Wow.
I'll mention this one picture, and I probably should have done the Hillary Clinton and bleach wash my phone after this, but a friend of mine that's a Mexican national, he has a friend down in southern Tamaulipas, and they have a big hunting club that they did, and they sent me a picture with so many pintail that I just went into panic mode. And I'm pretty, I'm not the most straight edge guy, but it was like, I was like, dude, if somebody finds this on my phone, like they're going to be asking questions, and then it's like I'm going to have to tell them this and that, and then who knows what's going to happen from there. Then there's going to be some guys, I'm going to tell on some guys from Mexico, because it was just, that's how many pintail were in this picture. I've never seen anything like it, but it like,
Wow.
it made my heart sink whenever I saw it, just because I'm like, holy hell. Yeah. I wouldn't want anybody else to see that picture, because it was like, it sent me into a panic. But and then not to mention, there's a lot, I know that the US is pretty much one of the about as corrupt as they go, about as any government can be. But in the same sense, in terms of corruption in Mexico on that lower level, we don't see near as much of that. You don't see, I know there's some corrupt game wardens that you hear about, but you're just not going to see people get away with something like that by a bribe. Most of the game wardens are in there they're in it for their passion, because they care about the wildlife. They're clearly not in it to so you try to bribe some of those guys, I guess it depends, but I would think most of them would just pretty much put you in cuffs immediately. So
Yeah. Yep.
Anyway,
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. Yeah, I wish Mexico would do a little something more about that. That'd be nice to know that our entire population ain't getting shot in one season down there.
right. Put a big net. Oh wait, I don't want to start talking about putting nets on the border. Never mind. We won't get into that.
make the wall a little higher if they can.
Yep.
So you've done some studies on waterfowl outside of the US. And one of them specifically we talked about was in South America. Do you care to share anything on that?
They're just that Torrent ducks are really cool ducks. They're even cooler when you see them in person. Are good to be around them. They're actually, you can't hunt them anymore down there. They closed the seasons down because their populations aren't doing so well. What was very interesting was they're like a little green-winged teal with ADHD when it comes. If you watch, you can go on YouTube and watch videos that people have done of the Torrent duck, but they're like a little tiny, I don't know what you want to call it, little thing that bounces around on the river. They're all over the place. They're so cool. They're probably my favorite duck. Are the 6 subspecies of the Torrent duck. They live all the way. There's a subspecies that lives in Colombia, and then Peru, and then there's 3 others that live down along the Patagonia, like Argentina, Chile, and Argentina, and they are a lot of fun to work with, and so one thing that's really cool is they live on the really fast rivers, kind of like our harlequin lives up here on the rivers, and they'll fly 600 miles inland. Like we have harlequins that live in Yellowstone and nest there. But anyways, so they like the really fast water, and the males, they will have 2 or 3 mile stretch of water on the river that is their territory. And they will get in fights with other males if another male comes into their territory. They have these little spurs on the edge of their wings, on
Like
the copperal. It's called
this
copperal.
part?
Yeah, yeah. And they'll get in fights. We got some really cool videos of them fighting for territories. And then they'll take on like 2 or 3 females, and that within that territory, and then those females raise the offspring of that male on that stretch of river. And but I wish
concubines.
yes, exactly.
That's
Yeah,
fun.
they're really cool little ducks. I wish I had one. We couldn't bring anything back with us for study specimens or anything like that, so I don't have one to show you, but they only weigh anywhere from 6 to 10 ounces, something like that. They're a little duck. But they're really long with their tail, because their tail is like a ruddy duck tail, kind of, to help them swim through that fast water.
Hayden shot plenty of those, so he knows all about the ruddy tail. The
Yeah.
Yeah, I can take you to the ruddy capital of the world.
That adaptation that you were talking about with the spike on the wing, the first time I saw that was in Argentina on the southern screamer. I guess they call it the chaha.
Oh yeah, it's the screamers.
Yeah, those things are. It's like, it's hard to describe with that sound. I guess you can look that up on YouTube as well. With that sound, it's almost like how you can just hear it from like a mile, like peacocks, right?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, that's cool stuff.
Real cool.
So I'll tell a quick story real quick. I'm not going to mention any names because I don't want to incriminate anybody, but so, like you mentioned, you're not allowed to bring those ducks back, right? So I've gone 3 years to Argentina now to hunt, and my friend really wanted to bring back I think it was a yellow-billed pintail and a silver teal. And so it's like, it's my understanding it's you can't get him back, right? So he may or may not have brought his daughter in her waders, and he put the duck inside the front pouch of her waders, and his plan was, if they caught him, that he was going to tell him that, I'm sorry, my daughter was playing with a duck, she must have forgot about it, sorry. And so, but he got it through customs. Hopefully the customs isn't listening to this. I don't want to get on a watch list. I didn't do it. He did it. But that's
yeah, that's pretty crazy. Yeah, I have a lot of people that go to Argentina, and they ask if I raise certain species so that they can get one mounted for to have that memory of their bird, even though in the back of your mind you know that it's not the bird you actually shot down in Argentina, but you still have a taxidermy bird.
Okay. You do that, like you'd be the person to contact for something like that?
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, neat. Okay, cool. That's real cool. So I can't help myself. I'll tell another quick story about Argentina. I'll never forget. So I didn't really look, I knew the basic, the more popular birds, let's say, the first time I went to Argentina, and I kind of am embarrassed to say I didn't do much research on the waterfowl. Whereas when I started hunting here, my wildlife teacher in high school made me learn the wings of every North American waterfowl species, ID them in flight. Obviously that's an acquired skill as well, but I didn't do that when I was in Argentina or went to. So after the first, it was like one morning, it was like we were hunting a cattle pond, and there was trees around it, and it was real small. Birds were just coming over the treetops and just diving right in. And, as I mentioned, so there was this one bird, he came over and as a solo, it was still kind of dark. And it was such a distinct outline in that bird. And when he put his tail out, to light, something triggered in my brain and I was like, that's a pintail. And we shot the bird and I didn't think anything of it. I didn't even say it out loud. And I had brought my dog down there with me. It was like her retirement hunt or whatever, the Chessie I just had to put down. This is pre-COVID, by the way, that this hunt happened. So she brought this bird back and set it down. And we've been shooting, to this point, we've been shooting a lot of yellow-billed teal. And so I saw the bird and she brought it to me and I was like, this is a pintail. And it yellow-billed pintail. And they're like, my friend Joaquin, he's gonna kill me if he hears me say this, but he owns the lodge down there. And he's like, that's a corn duck. So that's what they call the yellow-billed teal. And he's like, yellow-billed teal, they call it a corn duck. So I'm like, well, what's this duck? The pintail. And he's like, it's a big corn duck. And I'm like, he's like, small corn duck, big corn duck. I'm like, Joaquin, this is a different bird. This is not a teal. This is. And he's like, he started to get angry with me, you know? And so I went back to the shack, the shack that it's a nice lodge. I went back and got Wi-Fi and started looking up all the different species. And I saw it. I was like, yellow-billed teal. I showed him, sure as can be. And I showed him and he's like, kind of shrugged it off. And then it ended up coming around full circle because a year or two later, he came to Texas and visited, and we took him to Rockport and shot sprigs. And so I pulled the pintail feathers and told him to take them with him. And then so the following summer, we went back to Argentina again and shot some more yellow-billed pintail, except these actually had sprigs on them. And so that was like the full circle, right? I was like, I had forgotten that I gave him the sprig feathers from when we were in Rockport, and I pulled these. I was like, Joaquin, you got to put them in your visor. And I went to go put him in his visor, his little panel up here. Anyways, he already had feathers in there. And I'm like, what are those from? He's like, those are the ones that I brought from Rockport. And I was like, see, he couldn't say anything at that point. He knew that they were pintail from that point on. So
nice.
Yeah.
That's what we're calling pintail from now on. The big corn duck.
Right.
The big corn duck.
And then all the rumors will start about us baiting.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, you could call the northern pintail the blue corn duck.
The blue, the blue big, greater corn duck.
Big blue corn duck.
Yeah. Heck yeah. Well, Hayden, you got anything else? I'm out of questions here. You got any questions for us?
Enjoyed it, man. I appreciate you jumping on here with us. We tried to make it up to Idaho last year. If you watch the show, you'll see why we didn't. Clayton had his airboat. We was working out all the kinks with the motor, and we ended up not being able to make that trip. We were wanting to come up there, but it's definitely on my list. I was just telling my wife the other day, I'm pretty content with hunting where I hunt now, but from what I've seen, it just looks like an amazing place to hunt now. You know, I think until the rest of the country finds out about it, it'll still stay good. But it's somewhere I want to go, and if we ever get up there, man, we're gonna have to get together, and I want to see your. I don't know what the word was in my mind. Every time you say aviator or whatever, I think of just this giant bird cage with all these ducks. Like, check that out.
Yeah, I have a YouTube channel. I haven't posted a video in a long time, but I have a few YouTube videos that you can see my aviary, and I have over 58 species and over 300 something birds in my aviary. And then on the whole hunting in Idaho, that the ducks that skip over Idaho, they go to Utah. They just
that's what I
go
heard.
from Canada right over to Utah. So there's no ducks here. I don't know what you're talking about.
There's none in Arkansas either, man.
I have a short video clip of Hayden on that first hunt in 2011. It's like we're hunting a body of water that so we catch your lingo.
Yeah.
We're not very specific about where we go hunting, especially when it's public land.
If you want to hunt Idaho, you hunt the other side of the state over by Boise. And so that's where all the ducks are. They're in Boise.
Yeah, man. Well,
Yep.
thanks for jumping on here with us, Ben. We really appreciate you doing this with us. Appreciate
Yeah,
you
anytime.
Sunday.
Yep. Yeah, if you want to see the wheels of this bus fall off, you can watch Fowl Minds on Carbon. It's free to watch, so check it out.
Okay,
check out
awesome.
your
Well, thanks.
YouTube channel. Oh yeah, plug your Facebook. You have a hybrid page. Like how
Yes, I do.
somebody wants to contact you about message you about what hybrids, or how would that work, or just
Or
message in general?
yeah, you guys, people can PM me. I do check my spam messages, because a lot of people send me messages in there. I don't know how to work it on here, but I could try to. I have it also. My email address is bpierce@uidaho.edu, and then you can just look Ben Pierce on Facebook. I'm on Instagram as the Hybrid Duck 19. If I knew how to work this better, I could do what they do on YouTube, where they show your.
Oh, I'll put that up on the screen for you, man. Don't worry about it.
Oh, okay, yeah, no problem.
Mhm.
Yeah, so I love answering questions about ducks. I've been around them basically my whole life. I know a few things that, because I've raised them as well, I know a lot of stuff that a lot of people that just have seen them in pictures or see them 3 or 4 times a year don't know about them and stuff like that. So I'm more than willing to help anyone and learn about them as well, not just tell you what it is.
Cool.
But
well, if you ever need anything from us down here, we can help you out. I don't know how good Hayden is with the net gun. If you need a model duck, just let us know.
yeah, I'll have to get that permit first.
There you go.
Yeah, we want to do that, especially if we can shoot them in the off season with the net gun. Because season's closed here, and I'm still trying to figure out how I can get my dog to retrieve a duck that I shoot at.
Yeah, I like actually setting up decoys and going out with my camera in the off season, and they'll have them coming in, and there's a lot of magazines and stuff. They love those kind of photos of them, coming to land in the decoys. And when you're hunting them, you don't normally have your camera with you. You're trying to shoot them, and so it's a lot of fun to just, especially during the spring migration. And if you get out with your binoculars during the spring migration, you have more chances to see a hybrid, I think, in the spring, because everything's pretty much colored out. And so I find at least 1 or 2 hybrids of a goose or a duck when I go out on the spring migration to look at birds and try to get pictures of them and stuff. So
Cool.
they're around. You just have to go and look for them.
Right.
Yeah. Thanks again, man.
Yeah. Thanks.
Yep.
Good talking.
Yeah.
to
Thank you. Nice. I'll talk to you guys later.
you. Later.
All right, buddy. Take care. See you,
Okay.
Ben.
Yep. See ya. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.